I think that is record. Yeah, that's all go. Cool. So, folks, this is our first person level. Maybe the first thing we'll do is remove the gun, which is always the most annoying thing in any level. So, I know it's just like it's a bit annoying every time you play the game having a fire bullet when you click on the screen. So we're gonna select this. I'm gonna hit edit first person character. And I'm just going to break all pin lengths from this, and that should stop it firing. In the viewport, I make this turn off the visibility on this, isn't it? In rendering. Let me hit play and just see. One of the guns, this is a funny thing about the VR in Unreal. There's a gun like that. So now if we press play, I don't get the obnoxious first person shooting. Again, for the games you're creating, this is probably the way you're going to want it to look. Unless you're creating a sci-fi tennis exploration game. So, I'm going to create a new folder here, and I'm going to call it Blueprints. You don't necessarily need a new folder, but I'm going to create a new blueprint class. It's going to be actor class, and I'm going to call it doors. Double click it. It's going to open up because I've got my other blueprint docked as a tab there. It's going to do the same here. I'm going to jump back into Unreal, go into content, starter content, props, and there should be a door here. Now that I've selected this inside the content, if I jump back here into Unreal, once I hit add components, it should give me the option to add the door as a static mesh component. So static mesh sm_door. Which? I'll have the video up in a couple of minutes. Yeah. So, folks, what do you think? Is this door placed and pivoting in the right place, do we think? Yeah. I think that's probably where we'd want the pivot to be, right? So it's pivoted along the edge. That's where we'd expect a hinge to be. So, do you think there's anything else we need? We're just going to do this as a door when we walk up to it, it'll open. We're not going to do key input yet or anything. Yeah, we might have want a door frame, so let's jump back out here. This door frame, doors, add component. Does that look okay there? Yeah. I think that looks about right. Okay, when I think of what else we might need to make the door open when we walk up to it. Yeah. So we need to add like a box collision to this. So we're going to go add component, box collision. Now, one thing to make sure is that what you definitely don't want is you don't want this box to be a child of the door. Why would that be? Yeah, if it's a child of the door, we'd be moving the collision and we might run into issues there. So the easiest way to control that is just make that a child of the default scene roof. Basically attach it to default scene roof. Our box is now here. I'm just going to move it something like this. You don't have to be too worried with the scaling here. We just want to make it so that we're covering the right area. Something like this. So basically once we walk into this box collider, it's going to open the door for us. Okay, does that make sense? Yeah. So that's our scene set up. We can go ahead and save and compile, even though there's not really to compile. I'm going to leave this box selected, and in event graph over here, I'm going to scroll down on the right hand side, and I'll have to make this a bit wider for a second. These events here, are there any of those there that you think we might use to like open the door when we walk into it? Yeah. Okay, so we can just hit this plus here, and it's going to generate this event for us. So component on begin overlap. We're going to cast this to a character, as we've done before, just to make sure that it's only when a player walks into this door. This time, if you remember last time, we did a check to see if it was the player character. This time we're just going to want the doors to open. But we're only going to have one player character. We don't need to worry about it. If we end up then adding multiple AIs and characters, we might need to change this. For now, we can just do very simply cast to cast to first person character. Yeah. And we want to cast the other actor to a first person character. Okay, and that's just going to make sure this only fires if it's a character that walks through there. Now, what we're going to do is, from the pane of this, we're going to create an animation. Okay, and we're able to actually create animations inside the Blueprint class, and we're able to edit and tweak the timeline. Okay, so I'm going to type in here timeline, and down here on the bottom by default, it's going to have selected. Sorry, I'm moving my cursor over. Add timeline. Okay, and this is going to be similar to our like animation curves and stuff in Unity. I'm going to just rename this to doors. And now if I double click this, it's going to open up a new tab here. We're going to be able to create animations inside this. This is the animation sequence view, I think. Or sorry, the timeline editor. So what I'm going to do is create a float track, which is going to let me change a float variable. Okay, and we're just going to go from 1 to 0 to control the angle of rotation. Okay. We're going to use 1 to 0 because it's going to make our lives a little bit easier, but there's ways we could change this as well. But we're going to be able to change the angle kind of programmatically if we do 1 to 0. And basically 0 will be closed and 1 will be all the way open, whatever that might mean. So with my cursor here, I'm going to right click and add key. On the time here, I'm going to hit 0. Type in 0, sorry. Over here at 1, I'm going to right click and add a key. Make sure the time is 1. And I'm going to set the value to 1. Oh. Now if I press F on the keyboard, it'll focus in on this. Okay? So what I've got here is a perfect line with animation curve moving from 1 to 0. Did Baz do animation curves, or did he mention animation curves last year with you? Are you familiar with them? Cool. So one thing we can do is, with these curves, I can select one and control select the other and right click, and I'm going to hit auto. Okay, and auto is going to give me these handles that allow me to tweak the way the curve is going to move. And I'm just going to hit then flatten tangents. And this is going to give us a nice sort of smooth curve. And what it means is for the first couple of seconds of open door, it's going to open at like a slight crack. And then it's kind of going to quickly open and then just ease to the very end. Does that make sense? Okay, so it's going to be like the way we open the door is actually we start off quite slow and then we kind of push it open and slow as we get it open. It just creates a nice curve. It's a nice effect. Cool. So then we can hit save, compile, just make sure that's all okay. So that's our animation there. the update of this, basically every frame that this animation is running, we're going to call set relative rotation. And here we can select what we want that to be first. So we're going to do that for SM door. Okay, so we're able to set the rotation of the door. Okay, so this shows us here our target. This rotation here, we actually only want to change the Z value. So one thing you can do here is if you right click on this, it says here split struct pin. And basically this rotation value is currently a struct made up of an X, Y, and Z value, X, Y, and Z rotation. If we split it, we now have pins for X, Y, and Z. Okay. Can people remember which one of these we're going to want to change? Which? Z. Yeah. Yeah. If it was Unity, I think it would be Y. But if you're in Unreal, we're on Z. Cool. So if I just plug the output of this track into Z, how much do you think that would move by? 1 degree. Yeah. Yeah. What do you think we'd need to do to make it move by an angle we want? Yeah, multiply. So we're going to create an angle variable, and we're going to multiply the output of this track by an angle, and then that's going to give us the amount we're going to move by an angle. Does that make sense? So whatever value this is, multiply. Once this gets up to 1, we multiply by 90, it's going to be 90. Once it's at 0.5, multiplied by 90, it's going to be 45 degrees over. Does that make sense? So we're going to make a public variable that we can now edit in the inspector and have doors open up multiple angles if we want. So to create a new variable, I'm going to hit this plus on variables here. I'm going to call this angle. So it is just right click and create a timeline component. The video, this demo is almost done. We'll be able to try it out in a second. And then I'll have the video up in about 5 minutes so people can watch it during after. So we've created this angle. I can click this eyeball here to make it visible. I'm going to compile. I'm going to set the angle default to 90. Okay, and that's just because basically as a default, that's probably safe enough default. Okay, it's better to have a default that's useful. As opposed to if your default's set to 0, do you think there's a chance we're going to play this game and be like, oh, the door doesn't work, it doesn't open? Have you ever done that in a game where you set a default or a value to 0 and like you're trying to figure out why something isn't working? It's because you haven't changed the value from the default. That's definitely a thing that happens to me a lot, and you can spend a long time debugging something that's actually working. Okay, so then I'm just going to drag this variable in here. Get angle. So this is going to get whatever value we set in the inspector. And I'm going to drag a pin out of this. I'm going to type in multiply. I'm going to multiply float by float. So I'm going to multiply this by what the current track is at, and that's going to give me my Z. Does that make sense? That's just the operation we were talking about there. So again, if our final angle is 90 and this is halfway through the track, it's going to have the door open at 45 degrees. It's going to multiply 90 by 25. So then I'm going to hit save and compile. And hopefully this works. I've definitely had this stuff not work before. Oh. Why do you think it won't work at the moment? I didn't put a door in. So I put this in Blueprints. So, gotta press play. My door frame isn't letting me go. This is exactly what Jeff talked about with door frames and metrics. Okay, I'm gonna. Yep. So I'm gonna just disable my. I'm gonna delete out the door frame for now because I don't really need it. And now if I press play, It opens, and that's it. Now, very quickly, we can use the same process to have it that when we walk away from the door, it will close. So again, I'm going to select the box. Which one of these events do you think I'm going to need? End overlap, yeah. So the exact opposite. End overlap, we're going to again cast to first person character. And we're going to reverse the animation. Okay, that's the only tweak we need to make there, hopefully. And now if we press play, okay, our door will open or close, depending on where we are. Yeah. Press the button, yeah. So that's the thing we'll do in, I'm going to get you to get this set up in the lab, and then I'll move on to the next set of like how we do a button as an interaction. There's a few things we can do here. We're setting rotation here. We can also use this for like, if we want platforms moving up and down, we can use pretty much the same code to have a platform that has a start position. We can set what height, and instead of setting relative rotation, we can set relative location, and it'll move up and down. Okay, so we can use this art principle to do a lot of kind of similar things. Yeah, cool. There is one thing in this that I will show you in a while, but while you're making this, I'd like you to see if you can figure out how to solve this problem. If I walk into the door here, I'm going to just stay standing here for a second and then walk back. Can anyone guess what's happening there? The animation basically keeps playing, and then it's reversing back from somewhere way down the animation timer. Does that make sense? And I'll give you a hint. There is an event that will be fired here when the animation is finished. Okay, that you might be able to use to solve this issue. Okay, but basically what I'm going to do is upload this video in the lab. I'm going to get you to create that, and then we'll look at how we sort of use buttons to interact with that as well. Okay, cool. Yep. Apart from creating two separate letters, is there any way to like